Hello, sorry we are not in Barcelona. My name is Leroy Ding. I'm a manager at LEK Consulting. We have a fantastic speaker today, Mike. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm the Chief Scientific Advisor for the UK Department for International Trade, and we were due to speak in Barcelona on the Thursday, weren't we?
That's right, yeah. So both Mike and I are in London now, and Mike, I know we're going to talk about the private network as one of the topics today, but for the benefit of the audience who are less familiar with private network, including myself, can you tell us a little bit more about what is a private network?
I think with the arrival of 5G and indeed higher capacity with 5G, there's a lot more interest in factory automation. So how can we offer private networks that may help factories become more efficient with cellular or maybe other technologies such as Wi-Fi? What we find with some of the trials we've done in the UK is that they're very keen on thinking about the control of data, the management of data, but also looking at optimizing the capacity and the control in their own factories. That's a new model for looking at private networks beyond the traditional cellular model, which is a public network, maybe in some cases virtualized.
I see. So what are some of the major differences between a private network and a public network? Apart from the name suggests, one is private, another is public.
I think the first difference with the private network is it's usually under the customer's control. So usually a multinational or a big company that needs to automate or be more cost effective indoors in their factory. I think the second difference is it's usually then tailored coverage, but also perhaps tailored security for cyber security reasons, because sometimes the data within a factory is very sensitive. What's also very clear is that people are looking at hybrid combinations of public and private, where the public base of, say, 5G can help with the private network in a private capacity. So some of the trials we've done up in Worcestershire, in the Midlands in the UK, have actually shown with Bosch and other people how we can actually optimize private coverage with 5G as a backbone.
Oh, I see. I think that trial is actually a very interesting topic, which we'll talk a little bit later. But just coming back to the private network, is it more secure, as many people think, versus the public network?
It can be more secure in a private network, but I think it does depend on whether you've got a systems integrator who is actually specialist in that sector. A systems integrator who can think about the best of cellular or the best of Wi-Fi, the best of indoor communications to optimize the coverage. But that security is key, because no factory owner is going to want to put his production line at jeopardy or lose secrets. Therefore, having an end-to-end security policy is very important in this area.
Okay, I think that's very helpful. And you mentioned the trials earlier. So can you give us a little bit overview for what that trial is about? I presume it's about 5G, given everyone's talking about 5G these days.
Well, in the UK, we started some 2 years ago a trials and test beds programme backed by the UK government and in particular the Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Ministry. Some of those trials, the first batch, are coming to an end, but they've actually taught us a lot more about how to raise understanding about 5G. So it's not just taking base stations or switches, it's actually optimising some of the trials for particular industry verticals. So we've done a trial around health and social care in Liverpool. We've done a trial, certainly in Worcestershire, to try and improve industry automation in the factory. But we've also done rural trials up in the Orkneys and looking at the efficiency of salmon farming. You don't normally link things like 5G to salmon farming.
No, not really.
But actually, from a productivity and an efficiency point of view, it's been very helpful to have that sort of dialogue. So we've really addressed poor understanding, but also industry needs with some of those trials. And I'm pleased to say that last week we also announced a further £65 million funding for further trials, particularly on the creative industries or particularly on those big vertical sectors that need some help.
I see. So it looks like the trial is going very well. Can you tell us some of the key learnings coming out from the trials?
So one of the key learnings from the trials so far is that partnerships are key. So it's not just an operator matter, it's not just a vendor matter, it's sometimes an application matter or a vertical matter. Secondly, it's making sure you've got clear deliverables to make sure it works effectively for those involved with the trial. But also, it's very important that we then have learnings that help you to scale it up, because the money only goes so far. You can't do a trial for the whole nation, but you can choose certain verticals that give you demonstrators that you can scale up in some cases. Okay. And I think the new trials we've got, which are much more to do with creative industries, will show very interesting opportunities in streaming, and particularly using the higher capacity and higher speeds of 5G in streaming.
Yeah. So, Mike, you talked about the money, the commercial opportunities, and we all know that when technology is ready, it's one thing, but then how to commercialize the network or the services tended to be another thing. Do you think some of the early use cases would come out from that trials, like commercially?
I think we're already seeing examples where trials lead towards ideas and deployment. The trials aren't just in the UK. Clearly, we've seen trials in Singapore. We've seen deployment in Northeast Asia. Actually, we need to take leading markets as showing examples of what can be done. It's also true that in the private network space, some countries are more advanced than others already. So we need to understand what exists now rather than jumping to a new solution, which might include 5G. For example, many factory automation solutions depend on either Wi-Fi or some other in-building fixed or cordless type technology. So why do people move to 5G? They've got to have some benefits, some cost reduction or efficiency improvement, maybe some coverage improvement if they're going to do that. But the transformation potential is huge.
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned a very helpful point about industrial, because if I remember correctly, back to 2G, 3G, or even 4G, the main use cases tended to be more around consumers or individual customers. But based on some of the early discussion, it feels like a 5G is more towards, let's say, business use cases. What's your thought about this?
So I don't think 5G is just about business use, but I think it might start with business use. Now, I'm old enough to have worked in the telecoms industry and mobile for over 40 years. And back in the 80s, certainly on analog, there were early forms of private networks we had in the UK. So actually, the business need has become consumer, and that attracts a lot of publicity. With 5G, though, I think it's a natural place to start to say, how can the higher capacity and higher speeds of 5G offer business benefit first? You cannot do 5G coverage nationally overnight. You can't assume that 4G is going to go away or even 2G is going to go away. It's the interplay between the generations that are going to serve different customers. But 5G starts with being really strong for the business community.
I see. And then you mentioned that the trials have just raised or just received another £65 million fundings. Can you tell us a little bit about, what's your plan for the next phase of the trials or the test? How are you planning to use those £65 million fundings?
So we have briefing sessions that will occur during March and April. So for UK-based organisations, they can come to those briefing sessions and find collaboration partners. They can then decide on whether they want to do a joint bid or a combined bid for some of that money. Clearly, the expectation is that it won't just be government money, it will be a contribution that can be quantified from the businesses involved. But I think actually the opportunities there are huge to actually both bid for the money, but also innovate to help evolve your business. So it's not just the money, it's also that opportunity to collaborate and evolve your business.
I see, yeah. So we're not in Barcelona this year, but imagine if you're in Barcelona next year, what kind of things you'll be interested in seeing? What kind of the topics? Are you expecting to see more 5G compatible handsets? Are you expecting to see more discussion about private networks, the use cases? What are some of the key trends you think are happening and will happen?
So for this week's Barcelona, I had lined up lots of interviews for people around AI, artificial intelligence, new devices, and also Open RAN because of some of the potential in that area. Why AI? Because I think 5G networks need to be launched and AI compatible to make sure that the data processing works really well so you can start to personalize services. Devices, why? 5G progress will depend on devices and their availability. Open RAN, why? I think because we need to think about cost reduction of networks, and the Open RAN possibilities are strong, even if some of the standardization work still needs to be done. The reality is we can see new combinations of 5G networks involving Open RAN that may extend coverage, may help to reduce the cost, but also give other benefits as well.
I see, yeah. Do you have any clothing speech or recommendations or thoughts for the audience, that are watching our program worldwide?
I think briefly we had planned to take 160 British companies to Barcelona this week, so I know they're all disappointed they can't go. But I also know that the UK has a really strong capability in mobile, 5G, and in the services that they were hoping to offer. Let's hope they get the chance to offer them at other big events during this year.
Thank you very much for your time, Mike, and I will see you in Barcelona 2021.